Alright, we are back with another one of these movie reviews. This time I'm talking about A24's newest horror film, Talk to Me. The moment that I heard that Racka Racka were the two guys that were going to be directing this film, it became my most anticipated horror film of the year. I've been a fan of their YouTube channel for many years now, and so I knew that they had it in them to make something really good. And I'm super excited to say that after watching this movie, my expectations were pretty much met. I thought that this movie was absolutely fantastic. After watching the trailers, I was pretty excited still. If anything, it made me more excited because I thought the trailers looked really cool. But it was still one of those cases where the movie started and maybe like 5-10 minutes in, I was just like, man, I'm already really enjoying this. For the people who don't want to know anything, not even really plot or not even what the trailer showed, I'll be really spoiler free with this little snippet at the beginning here, and then I'll get into more specifics a little bit later as we go on. For Talk to Me, I thought the acting was top notch. It was so much better than I was expecting, especially when I saw that the majority of actors are like teenagers. So, and you know, it's a little scary when you delve into that realm of acting, but they managed to blow it out of the water. It was really honestly insane. Like, I was shocked at how good the acting was getting. It was scary, which I don't say that very lightly. There were times where I kind of like looked off a little bit. Sometimes not really because like I was scared of what I was seeing, but because it was really gross. Because if you guys know Racka Racka and you know the YouTube channel, they do a lot of practical effects and practical gore, and it gets really hard to stomach sometimes. And so I was expecting to have at least a scene in this movie where I was like, oh, this is this is gross. The movie sits at an hour and 35 minutes, which when I saw that, I actually got a bit more excited because that meant that this movie was hopefully just not going to waste any of its time, which it didn't. It didn't feel like it was overstaying itself. It never really felt like it got boring, even though it does sit at a slower pace. My initial thought was that it was going to be like a bit more, I guess, show-off-y, mostly based off the channel and the videos they normally would make. But it actually ended up being a lot more slower of a pace. When it's a scary scene, it's pretty action-ish. Maybe not action, but just very active. When it's not in the scary scene, it feels... people are comparing it to Hereditary. I didn't really see any moment like that was like Hereditary. I think people are just saying that because the movie takes its time with its character moments. And that's another thing, is that I actually cared about characters. And I gotta say, not even Evil Dead Rise kind of did that for me. Like, yeah, the characters are really cool and kind of interesting, and I was constantly being like, all right, when are we going to start losing them? When are they going to start dying here? But in this movie, I kept sitting there and I was like, man, I don't want anything to really happen to these characters anymore. And then when they do start going balls to the wall, it's rough. But anyways, the movie is about our main character, Mia, who just recently lost her mother. I believe it's been 2 years at the point of the movie. There is this embalmed hand that this group of teenagers have been using as like a party trick. It's kind of like a drug where you hold the hand, you say, talk to me, and you end up possessed by a demon, and apparently it gets them like high. It's a very euphoric feeling, and the best feeling in the world, getting possessed, apparently. But you can't be possessed for longer than 90 seconds, or else you're probably gonna be stuck with the demon. And what do you know? That happens. And then our movie begins. And so we follow everything from Mia's perspective, which is really cool. I saw an interview where they were saying that you won't see, like, if someone else is using the hand, you're not gonna see the ghost. Only when Mia is using the hand, you'll see the ghost, because it is that strict through her eyes only, which I thought was really cool. Something that stood out right away was the look of the ghosts, the makeup on them. When they showed the first ghost, I was like, oh wow, they got pretty graphic with how they look. And then they showed the second ghost, I think like the main ghost, I believe, if I remember correctly. I was like, whoa, very impressive prosthetics, I must say. It looked very real, and I'm sure it was real. I'm sure it was practical. Like I was saying earlier, the movie definitely doesn't shy away with any of its violence. Not that it's like over the top violent to an extent. It's not like they're trying to be violent for shock, like just to get you to look away and be like, oh, that was the grossest thing you could have possibly done there. It really more feels like grounded to the tone of the movie with the added like Racka Racka violence, to like creative violence. And like I was saying earlier, they do a really good job at, once it gets super violent, you care about the characters enough to where you're sitting just like, God damn, stop. Stop messing with these characters that I've grown to like. I will say also, if you are someone like me, and I guess the more you hear how excellent a movie is, the less likely you're like, okay, like let's not get too crazy now. So I'm trying not to like overhype the movie for anybody. Well, I guess you need to have your expectations pretty set, because I guess if someone was going into the movie really wanting like intense action horror, I guess, you might be disappointed, because yeah, there's like the scene, you know, how like, you know, some horror movies just have that scene in it to where it's like, that's the one to look out for, that's the really gross or scariest scene. This movie has one of those, but it's not like something like an Evil Dead movie where you can count how many scenes there are that are violent on your hand. This one's got like one or two that are like shockingly violent, but they ride the line of like, it's not offensive, but also it shouldn't really matter. But you know, there are some movies that are just like, let's be violent for the sake of just making it as gross as we can. And this one, it really like fits with the story and is used to elevate the story, which I think was done really well. The main actress was incredible. I really think that we're going to start seeing her in more stuff. I really hope we see her in more stuff, and if we don't, that would be insane, because her performance in this movie, I was floored by. And what's great is that most of, if all the cast is Australian, and so you don't really recognize, at least for me, I didn't recognize any of these actors. And so it made it a lot easier to, since I didn't know who the actors were, and the actors were stellar, I felt these characters quickly became incredibly believable, and it was able to immerse you into the world very quickly and very well. And so that was just a big pro, and that made the movie even better than it already was. That's mostly all there is to say when it comes to non-spoilers. If I say anything else, you know, you'd be getting too a bit too specific. So I would definitely go watch Talk to Me. It is still considered an indie film, even though like throughout the movie it doesn't seem like it. It's kind of like got a bit of a blend. Like, it doesn't look like it's an indie film, but there's like hints of indie throughout. Like, the best parts of indie are in it, and it was speechless. I would highly recommend that you guys go out and see Talk to Me. Whether if it comes out on streaming, I'm not too sure, but it was definitely a good theater experience. I will say that too before I get into spoilers. When I was trying to buy tickets, most theaters were full, which has me excited, and it was an active audience. There was a lot of people reacting to like the violence, and it was really funny. I don't really get that a lot. Most horror movies, people just stay silent, and most recent horror movies have been kind of lame, so that's probably excusable. But other than that, let's get into spoilers. I'm gonna try not to go scene by scene. I say that every time, but you know, if we end up doing it, oh well. So our main character, Mia, we learned that 2 years ago she has lost her mom, and it is something that really affects her. She is, if you've been here before, you know I'm not good at remembering names at all. Remembering Mia's name is as good as it's gonna get, probably. So Mia is friends with Jade, who has a brother named Riley, and Mia babysits for Riley, and she's very close to the family. This movie has some funny comedy scenes that I thought were pretty well done and didn't seem like they were shoehorned in. Most of them involved the mom character, which the mom was very funny. There's like a scene where she's going around to everyone trying to find out if they're throwing a party that night, and she's pretending like she's in on it, and they're not falling for it. It was a goofy scene. It's not like a horror comedy in any means. Like, there's like a few, like, haha, the comedy dies pretty quickly. You see through Mia's phone as she's like watching Snapchat the party where people go and get possessed, because it's just an active thing that these people do. They start talking about it. Jade doesn't believe it's real. Mia wants to actually try it out. Eventually, they go and they hang out. it seems that a lot of the characters don't like Mia. They say that she's too weird, and she brings everything down, but Mia is the first to jump up and volunteer to get possessed by the hand, and this is where we see how it works. We see the first ghost, which, if I remember correctly, is this old man. You don't see him for very long, but then the next ghost is this, like, drowned lady, and ooh, it's a sight. It's pretty gruesome. But they go through, Mia gets possessed, and this is where I was like, whoa, she's good at what she's doing. Unfortunately for Mia, she ends up holding the hand longer for the 90 seconds, and it kickstarts the events of this movie. We see pretty quickly that the ghost showed a liking to Riley, and as time goes on, you start to notice that the ghosts are actively going after him. The big crazy scene is, I believe, the second or the third time. There's a montage where it's basically all of them partying and using the hand together. It's a really good one. You don't really see montages in horror movies, really. I can't really think of the last one that I can remember, but it was a very welcome addition to the movie. I thought it was very well placed and well done. But things start to go wrong when Riley uses the hand, and Riley is a younger teenager. Jade is like, you shouldn't really do it, but everyone else is obviously saying that he should, and that Jade should stop being such a bitch. And eventually Jade she gets sick of it, she walks out. Mia at first is like, maybe it's not a good idea, but Riley unfortunately convinces her that, whatever. And they agree that he will hold it for 50 seconds. At first, he has like the initial reaction of holding the hand and getting possessed, but it appears that it's Mia's mom that possessed him. And so Mia, when the 50 seconds starts to roll up and they're going to try to take the hand away and stop the possession, Mia stops it and is like, let me talk to my mom for a bit, which is, it's like, come on, people, don't do this. But it's believable, I was like, it's hard to be too upset, but I don't think it's like in the realm of like a super bad horror movie decision to where it's like you're being like stupid. I can kind of get it that she would kind of freak out a bit and be like, let me talk to her a bit more. Unfortunately, Riley's possession takes a horrible turn for the worst, and he starts slamming his head against the table repeatedly. If that wasn't already horrible enough to watch, he reaches and starts trying to take out his eye, and yuck. It was practical, and it was cool, but it was hard to keep my eyes looking at it. Luckily, they kind of get his hand out of his eye, but the chair like flies him against the window. He starts slamming his head against the side of like a dresser. Jade puts her hand to try and stop, but he just slams it against her hand and breaks her hand or something. I'm pretty sure her fingers get broken in that scene. But after that, obviously Riley's in the hospital, and this really is the moment to where like the makeup shines, because there's the practical makeup that's on Riley, and even the practical makeup when the characters get possessed is a really cool look. But over the course of the movie, Mia is still seeing ghosts outside of touching the hand, so they are starting to drive her a little crazy. One ghost is her mom, and it seems to be putting her along this path, except we know that the hand can be deceitful and pretend to be other people, and so the whole time we know that the mom is more than likely just not her mom, but they're just manipulating her throughout the movie to get Riley, because there's a scene where Mia's in the hospital and they're trying to save Riley by blowing out the candle, because they thought that they didn't the last time, and that's why the ghost is still in him. Because, really a little ahead of myself here, but when Riley wakes up from his coma, he goes back to trying to like kill himself, like he's still possessed, and so he just knocks himself back out. And so they believe that they messed up and didn't close the portal between realms. And so they go to the hospital, they try to get him possessed again, I believe, to then blow out the candle and actually cut ties. But it doesn't work. If anything, Mia uses the hand to try and talk to him. And it's this little girl, and she shows her like this image or this sequence of what I took as just hell, where it's all these demons just kind of like torturing Riley, and You don't see a lot of child torture in horror movies. I think the last time I saw one that was like rough was Doctor Sleep, where I went, this is really excessive. But you just don't see, most movies just don't go there. But this one did. I know, I kind of expected it. When Riley got introduced, I was like, they've got something planned for him. And I didn't know the extent that it was going to go, however. At this point, you kind of question if Riley is actually being tortured or if it is just the ghost continuing to manipulate Mia into killing Riley, because that's what the ghost mom is saying. The ghost mom says that the only way to save Riley is to kill him at this point. That's when you start to think, like, Riley's probably fine, maybe now, and now they're just trying to get Mia to go through and finish it. We see also throughout the movie that Mia's relationship with her dad is a little rocky. She never answers his phone, but Mia's mom had killed herself, and the dad had kind of lied about the real reason, like the fact that the dad had told Mia that she accidentally killed herself, when in actuality, of course, the mom meant to do it. And so once Mia finds out, it just makes the relationship even worse. But we start noticing that there's more sequences where Mia is seeing a ghost doing something, and then we cut out and we see that it's actually Mia doing that thing. Like, there's a situation where she's with Jade's boyfriend and she sees a ghost sucking his feet, and it turns out Mia was just the one doing it. And that was a kind of weird scene. But also there's a scene where he makes out with a dog. That was a strange scene. I was like, I don't know how to feel about watching this, because it holds on a long time with this guy just like making out with this bulldog. I was like, okay. Unfortunately, the relationship between Mia and her dad comes to a tragic end because a ghost pretending to be her dad comes in and starts attacking her, and then she reaches, grabs scissors, and then it timed perfectly. The real dad runs into the room and gets on top of Mia to like try to help her, and she stabs him in the neck with scissors. But we don't really see the dad too much, but he does get a good scene where he reads the mom's like suicide note to her, which was a pretty sad scene. But I mean, it was doing well with its character moments, because like I was saying earlier, the character scenes are really good in this movie, and like a lot of horror movies you see, it just, the characters aren't given really too much thought. The climax of the movie has Mia in the hospital, and she's taken Riley out of the hospital in a wheelchair, and it shows as if like it looks like she's going to push him out into traffic. Jade is running out to try to stop her. I honestly thought the movie was gonna like end with her tossing Riley out. He was gonna like explode on a car and the movie was gonna end. But I was like, I really hope they don't do that. But that's currently where my mind is sitting right now, that they might do. But that isn't what happens. You don't really see how it happens, but Mia is the one that ends up in the road getting hit by a car, and Riley is safely in Jade's arms, up in the dirt. After this, it kind of cuts to Mia being in the hospital, and you quickly see that it's kind of like a dream sequence, where like the lights are shutting off, she sees her dad just walking throughout the hospital, and he gets into an elevator and it closes right before Mia can get to it, and all the lights shut off. That's also an ending. I thought that that's where it was going to end, when all the lights went out. I was like, maybe this is where it'll end, but that would also just be kind of anticlimactic and lame. But you see not the embalmed hand, but a human hand come out from the darkness above a candle, and Mia reaches and grabs the hand, and then she, like, all the lights come on, and she's in this room with this group of other people. If I remember correctly, they were speaking Spanish. She's sitting there holding this guy's hand, and the guy, I'm assuming, says, "Talk to me," in Spanish, because it turns out on the road, Riley was hit by cars and died, and it turns out that she is now one of the spirits that can be summoned to talk to and possess people through the hand. That was like the whole full circle ending. And that's basically Talk to Me. That I really liked the ending a lot, actually. People were saying that, I had already seen people say that the ending was really good, but you know, people say that a lot, but for me it's hard for horror movies to get an ending to where I'm like, that was a satisfying conclusion. This movie managed to nail it on the head, and I thought the ending was excellent. It was a nice shock reveal. It wasn't like 100% a happy ending, but it also wasn't like a completely depressing ending where like all the characters are dead or Riley gets blown up by a car. It was that horror dread, kind of, to where it's just like, it's an unfortunate situation, and it's a scary situation to find yourself in, but it's not just like, wow, there was nothing good at all. This is definitely a movie I want to rewatch, and it's really just been really cool to see because, like I said, I knew that Racka Racka had it in them to make a really good movie, but for it to be like this good, that's really cool. It's a good, like, inspiring horror film. Like, I feel like horror films should strive to be more like this one, to where it really just goes for it. It's a unique story because also it's a possession movie, and possession movies nowadays are so, they just don't are never done right. They're just not really good anymore. They're really dumb, and so this was a nice refresh on that little subgenre of horror. But that's probably all I really have to say about Talk to Me. I highly recommend that everyone goes and sees this movie because really just it's not even long. It's an hour and a half, and it doesn't waste any time. It is an hour and 35 minutes of just peak horror storytelling and characters. The acting, incredible. The scares were incredible. All the practical effects were amazing. And so I really, I know it seems like it's just been all praise, but I mean, I can't think of really anything negative to say about it. The only thing is that, like, while I do say that I like the ending, it does kind of feel like the movie just ends, but it's strictly Mia's perspective, and so you don't really, it's tough to see the transition of when she goes from being alive to being dead, because it was probably that seamless for her in this weird situation, because when she grabs the hand and gets summoned, she's obviously shocked, like she didn't know she was dead. So that's just really fascinating to see, because I also don't think you get movies that are strictly through one character's eyes as, like, detailed as this movie was going, because even when it comes to ghosts, you don't see ghosts that other characters are seeing, you only see the ghosts that Mia is seeing. But other than that, if you're still here, thank you for hanging out this whole time as I rambled about this horror movie I really liked that you should all definitely go check out. But anyways, if you had seen Talk to Me, let me know what you thought about it down below. And really, other than that, I will see you in the next movie I have to talk about.